again, YouTube family. Thanks for those of you who will join me on this episode on my YouTube channel. Please hit the like button if you like the video. If you've not subscribed, consider subscribing to the channel. YouTube's weird. This channel sees a period of growth, then stagnation, then a period of growth and stagnation. That may be normal. I'm not that familiar with YouTube, honestly, but consider subscribing if you're not subscribed to the channel. And let's dive in. As you can tell by the image to my left, we're talking today about Governor Greg Abbott. And I did a video a while back on Ron DeSantis's campaign launch for, he's running for the Republican presidential bid in the Republican primary. And as I've laid out, because of the way Ron DeSantis treated migrants, men, women, and children, he is disgusting. There's no chance in hell I would ever consider voting for him for anything. He should not be in a position of public trust at all, because of the fact that he doesn't give a damn about the lives of human beings. And someone who is like that should not hold positions of power for sure. And we get to Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott has done the same thing that Ron DeSantis did, shipping migrants, luring them onto planes, shipping them to other states. And for Greg Abbott, he also shipped migrants to a cold area, Northern California, in the wintertime when they were not prepared for it, they were not dressed for it, they were tired, exhausted, and sent to a part of California that's cold in the wintertime. And he put lives at risk for political showmanship, for just a political play. For Greg Abbott, he was trying to win brownie points with the most bigoted far-right members of the Republican base. And as I've said before, I don't know if that part of the base makes up 10% or 70% of the Republican voting base, because at this point, it's hard to tell. And Greg Abbott is again doing vile things. One of the things he's done recently is not only did he repeal the requirement in Texas. I mean, we're experiencing a heat wave in the country right now. Where I'm at in Las Vegas, it's very hot, but also in Texas, it's extremely hot. They're seeing 100+ degree days, day after day after day. Greg Abbott rolled back the requirement for employers who have workers working outside in the heat to provide water and water breaks for them. He took that away. I mean, if you're a working American, I don't see how you can have any kind of how this guy can have any kind of appeal to you. It makes no sense to me how this guy can appeal to anyone who's ever worked for a day in their life. But not only did he do that, he took away the requirement for these water breaks for the workers, but he also put in place that individual municipalities within Texas, that is the more left-leaning blue areas in Texas, couldn't put that rule in place for themselves. They couldn't govern themselves. It's coming from the governor's mansion in Texas that, no, you cannot require employers to provide water breaks. That's bad enough. That's bad enough that I don't see how anybody can vote for this guy. And I've had a soft spot in my heart for people in Texas. I mean, I've known from being in the military plenty of people from Texas who were genuinely really good people. They're patriotic, they love the country, they're willing to serve, they appreciate service. But honestly, Greg Abbott is despicable. I mean, he's done the same thing to migrants that DeSantis did. For me, he's off the team. He's not a team player in the human race anymore. And then the water break thing. Why? Do you need to pander to your wealthy donors that bad that you're willing to turn your back on working Americans? And how can people in Texas, working Americans in Texas, look at it and say, that's our guy, we want him to be governor still? I mean, you've had options in Texas. There are other people who have run against Greg Abbott. You've voted for this piece of shit. So at this point, I'm just like, okay, so if you're in Texas and you're that big of a bigot, you're that big of a hate monger, if you hate working Americans that bad, so be it. You know, this is your guy. But the story we're talking about today is what came out recently, just yesterday or the day before. There was a Department of Public Safety trooper. It's a trooper / medic working for the Texas Department of Public Safety, who are dealing with the migrant issues in Texas. Texas shares a border with Mexico, a very large border with Mexico. And the thing is, I don't have a problem with states like Texas saying, hey, some of these migrants coming across the border, let us ship them to California, to New York, to Pennsylvania, to wherever, as long as it's coordinated and planned for and prepared for. That should be done, honestly. This is a nation of 50 states. All 50 states should bear the burden of migrants that need to come to this country for shelter. But we've not been letting them in. And Biden has been just as bad on the borders, just as brutal as Trump was. But this story is dealing with an area in Texas called Eagle Pass. This is the map of Eagle Pass, Texas, and it's right on the border. It's right at the Rio Grande River. And you have this Department of Public Safety trooper / medic who goes on patrols. They encounter migrants, and typically they will give the migrants water, because people that have traveled to this country, I mean, most of these people are the migrants who are now just stuck in Mexico, and they've been stuck there for years. I mean, Trump put in Title 42 in 2020, and Biden continued it. It was just recently done away with. The court required Biden to finally do away with it, and I don't know that it was constitutional to begin with Trump. But you had the caravans that years ago, you remember people talking about those, that they came from Central and South America to the southern border while Trump was president. And Trump was trying to figure out how to not let them in the country. The thing is, and the thing that gets me, the news media lets Republicans frame it as illegal immigration. And it's not illegal immigration. It's completely legal for anybody to come into this country, to step foot into this country to request asylum. That's completely legal. It's ingrained in U.S. law as well as international law that we require to get put in place by other countries, to have other countries accept migrants seeking asylum. But in Eagle Pass, Texas, you had this trooper, and one of the issues is this thing called Project Lone Star that Greg Abbott put in place. And the whole point of Project Lone Star is to have this vile, brutal, dangerous, militaristic-looking war zone border there in Texas to deter people from coming into this country. Just to try and deter migrants from coming into the country. And this, some people call this razor wire. In the Army, you called it concertina wire. But it's very dangerous. And it's spiraled, and it's got super sharp pieces on it, the razor pieces, that will slice you to bits. And for Project Lone Star, Texas has set aside around $5.2 billion just for this, putting these deterrents up, these brutal, inhumane deterrents to try and keep people from doing what honestly is their legal right to do. to enter this country and request asylum. And that's where we are with this story. And the trooper had sent an email to the Department of Public Safety over his concerns. And he was explaining in the email that over a 7-hour period last month, he experienced a 4-year-old girl who had passed out in 100-degree heat. She had become exhausted from crossing the Rio Grande and attempting to navigate the razor wire and passed out as Texas National Guard troops pushed her group back towards the Mexican border. There was a man with a severe leg laceration received after attempting to free his child from the razor wire that was wrapped around a buoy. And so the guy received a leg laceration while he was trying to free his child from razor wire, and they've got this string of buoys. I'll show you a picture of that in a moment. In the river with razor wire wrapped around it. That's not the worst part of it, but that's there too. There was a 15-year-old boy with a broken leg from attempting to cross a more dangerous part of the river to avoid the buoys. And that's one of the problems with the buoys. And they also have barrels wrapped with razor wire in the water, which is insane. It's pushing people to try and cross the Rio Grande River in deeper, more treacherous parts of the river. The next day, a woman and her 2 children were attempting to cross the river when she and her children went underwater. The woman and 1 child were pulled from the river, but were pronounced dead after they got to a hospital. And the woman's other child's body was recovered the next day, according to news reports. And this is a Texas Department of Public Safety trooper/medic that's bringing this up in an email to his superiors. On a separate day, in 108-degree heat, the medics found about 120 migrants camping out, exhausted and hungry. The group had nursing infants among other small children. The medics say they received orders. They received orders from their superiors, which they questioned, which is good. And in the end, they didn't obey the order. They did not obey the orders. They received orders to push the group of migrants, including nursing infants and small children, back into the river, back into the Rio Grande. And believing this would lead to a significant drowning danger, a significant drowning hazard, the medics refused the order. Good for them. That shows they have decency. They have humanity to them, despite what their job is and what the monsters that apparently are commanding them are trying to say. These trooper/medics want changes to Operation Lone Star. As one of the trooper medics explained in an email, I think we have stepped over a line into the inhumane. We need to operate it correctly in the eyes of God. We need to recognize that these are people who are made in the image of God and need to be treated as such. For me, I'm not that religious, so the references to God don't really affect me as much as they do someone who's a particularly religious person. But Texas is run by Republicans who claim that religion is the guiding force behind them. Then you look at the stuff they do and you're like, how? Have you ever read the Bible? Have you ever read the New Testament? How are you doing this stuff to people? But that's not all. And you have the trooper medic, whose name is apparently Nicholas Wingate, who said the wire and barrels in the river need to be taken out, as this is nothing but an inhumane trap in high water and low visibility. So you have these barrels wrapped with razor wire, concertina, then submerged into the river. As people are walking across the river, they end up getting cuts on their legs, their feet, get injured, and some people are going to get hurt and drown. They're not going to be able to continue crossing because they're injured by these concertina-surrounded barrels that are dumped into the river. And as he's saying, it's in high water areas of the river where there's low visibility down into the river, so the migrants can't see the hazards they're coming up on, and it's just an inhumane trap. He's absolutely correct in his description of that. You also have Rodolfo Rosales, the Texas director of the League of United Latin American Citizens, speaking about Abbott's plan, that is the Operation Lone Star. We view it as a chilling reminder of the extreme measures used throughout history by elected leaders against those they do not regard as human beings, seeking only to exterminate them regardless of the means employed. That's from The Guardian. And I do not disagree at all. You are completely inhumane when you look at this as reasonable things to do, when honestly the people who are breaking the law is you. It's completely legal for people to come into this country and request asylum. And when we're not letting them in at the ports of entry, they're going to cross other areas because they're desperate. They are desperate. And they've been desperate. Some of these people have been there for years, since Trump was in office. And this is an image of the buoy line across the river, as you can see. It's a group of very large buoys set up with concertina wire wrapped around them to try and prevent migrants from crossing. And so if you go around the buoys, what you're going to is deeper, more treacherous parts of the river, which also have barrels apparently with concertina wire wrapped around them in the river, which is insane. And I don't get how you can be an elected representative and be this absurdly cruel and inhumane to people. So you can see in the foreground in this image, as these immigrants are trying to find a way into the country to request asylum, they're migrants, and there's many children. There's men, there's women, and there's kids, there's infants. And you can see the concertina wire in the foreground between the camera and those kids. And my heart goes out to these people. I mean, there are people who were left in such a desperate position. They left their home country, took a treacherous trip. I mean, whether they're coming from Central America or South America, that's a long, arduous, dangerous trip. They came to this country. By the time they got here, Trump was in office. He was playing games, trying to not let them in. And then COVID hit, and Trump used COVID as an excuse. While Trump was trying to downplay COVID, the significance of it, the dangers of it, he was using COVID as an excuse to not let migrants in. As his attorney generals were telling him, it's the law, they're allowed to come in. And Trump used the emergency declaration of COVID being a national health emergency, and that's what Title 42 is. The migrants weren't allowed in because of the emergency nature of COVID. Even though some of these migrants were coming from countries that didn't have COVID running as rampant as it was in this country, because this is America, and our hubris and our lackadaisical attitude towards everything is going to cause something like COVID to be worse here than it will be in a lot of other places. But that is Operation Lone Star, and it is Greg Abbott trying to be as absolutely brutal and harsh as he can to migrants, people who have nothing, no power, no money, who are just coming here asking for a chance, asking for a place for safe haven. And you look at it, the people that founded this country, the people that wrote the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, that fought the Revolutionary War, they came here looking for safe haven. And they created this country as a safe haven to everybody else who needed to flee their country. That's what this country was established as. And now you have the modern day Republican Party who are trying to keep people out. And not just try to keep them out. who are being extremely cruel about it, who are playing with the lives of others, men, women, and children. You can see by the way they're treating these kids. All the times you hear Republicans talk about, oh, we just care about the kids, we're worried about the kids, that's bullshit. It's not true. It's obvious. We can see it in your acts. You can talk whatever BS you want. You're a liar. And for as much as I've had a soft spot for people in Texas, I'm done. Greg Abbott's going to run for re-election as governor. And if you elect him again, the people who vote for this despicable person, you're despicable too. Sorry. You don't get to claim you're a good person and vote for somebody that's that despicable. Didn't work that way. You are just as despicable as him because you're empowering him to do this to other human beings. If you're okay with that, then so be it. That's who you are. Don't claim to be pro-life. Don't claim you care about kids. Stop the lies and the bullshit. And just say you're a bigot and you hate other people. And you're okay with cruelty. You're okay with harming and killing other men, women, and children for shits and giggles. Just say it. Be who you are. Don't lie anymore. And if that's who you are, if that's what a majority of the state of Texas is, then by all means, vote for Greg Abbott again. Put him back in office. He's not worth a damn. At all. You have other options. You may have options in a Republican primary against him. You'll definitely have somebody, whether Democrat or independent, whoever, running against him for governor. You've got options. At this point, honestly, you're despicable if you don't vote for one of the other options just to get this horrible person out of office. Because this is how he treats human beings. It's absurd. I don't see how people claim to be compassionate Christians. They care about life. They're pro-life. They care about kids, and they allow this garbage to happen. People have died. I think there's around 700 to 800 people per year dying because of this craziness at the border. And that's going to keep happening as long as Greg Abbott's getting billions of dollars to put more booby traps down there on the border to try and harm men, women, and children. More men will die, more women will die, and more children will die, more infants will die. You had there was a woman that was crossing the concertina wire who was having a miscarriage. Republicans don't care about the abortion thing. They'll put this stuff up and have a pregnant woman end up in it with a miscarriage. They don't care. It's fear and hate. The modern Republican Party is the party of hate, and they use fear to feed the hate. And for the last part of this bit, for those of you who do vote Democrat, Biden is also to blame. I mean, the horrible things that Greg Abbott's doing, that's on Greg Abbott. And the horrible things that Greg Abbott is doing, that's on the voters of Texas that keep voting him in office. But Biden's to blame also, because the border of the United States, protection of the United States border, falls squarely, legally, constitutionally, on the federal government. It's the federal government's job to protect the border of the United States. And I would also put in there to protect people who cross the border legally, because you keep having these people frame it incorrectly that this is illegal immigration. It is completely legal for migrants to come into this country and seek asylum. Joe Biden, fearing that he was going to be made out to be some socialist communist if he did away with the brutal border policies of Donald Trump, continued them. Republicans are going to give you no credit, Joe. You're a moron. You're an old, tired, weak-ass moron. What do you hear from Republicans constantly? We have an open border. We don't. We never have. I would like it better if we did, because we wouldn't be killing men, women, and children. But we don't. Joe Biden has failed miserably on the border. And I believe because Joe Biden knew he had no solution for the border, he put Kamala Harris in charge of it to let her sink with the border failure. And so it falls on Joe Biden as well. And you've had people speaking for the president saying that they're having the Department of Justice look into what's going on in Texas, blah, blah, blah. It falls under the federal government. The federal government can flat out tell Greg Abbott to stop what he's doing. Greg Abbott can put National Guard troops at the border. He's got control of the National Guard in Texas. He's the governor. But protection of our border falls to the federal government. And the federal government has the authority to have the buoys removed, the concertina wire removed, to take the booby traps out of the river. And the thing is, with as much money as Joe Biden has been pushing around, he's had plenty of money to allocate a chunk of money to take care of the border issue, to hire people to go down there and process people at the ports of entry, to just say, come in. I mean, Republicans would say, oh my God, we have an open border, brown people everywhere down at the border. They're saying it anyway. So why are you not doing it? Why are you not hiring a group of people to go down there and process these migrants into the country safely, humanely, and let them get settled into the country and set up with a court date for an immigration hearing? And the thing is, Joe Biden, I don't know if he's too lazy, too incompetent. I don't know what his problem is. I mean, it's like he left Kamala Harris in charge of the border so she can fall on her face. He's not asking, from what I've seen, for help to actually operate the border, to do as I was talking about, to hire a group of people. I mean, we've thrown trillions of dollars around. You certainly could set aside enough money to have immigration attorneys, to hire more immigration judges, because, as I was saying, these immigrants, when they come across, they have to get set up with a immigration court date, and that's not part of the judiciary. The immigration courts, the immigration judges, they fall under the executive branch. And so Joe Biden could have plenty of judges go down there to operate more immigration courts. Could have volunteers along with paid workers to go down to the border and process migrants through, taking their pictures, their names, setting them up with court dates. If they have family in the country, helping them get connected with their family they have here in the country so they can settle in and get away from this living on the edge of death every fucking day. It's frustrating. And even though, as I've said, I'm done with Abbott. People like Abbott, people like DeSantis, they're inhumane. They treat human beings in a way that they're off the damn team. I don't care anymore. They're off the team. And Joe Biden has failed just as bad. He's not putting the concertina wire down there, but he's not stopping it. He's not doing what he needs to do as president to get control of the border and start processing all these migrants that pulled up under Trump. And yeah, it's Trump's, part of the issue is Trump's issue. But he's not president anymore. Biden is. Joe Biden, you're the president. I don't care what the other presidents left you with. If you want to be a leader, you claim you do, you run for re-election, you're trying to block out primary challengers from being able to debate your ass. You want to be the one in charge, then be in charge. Take charge, be a leader, and process these people. So it's also a failure on Biden's administration. One of the biggest failures. And if he ends up getting voted out of office in 2024, which is highly likely, his approval ratings are in the garbage. This will be one of the glaring legacies that Biden leaves, that he did next to nothing with the border. He left a mess and let these vile, disgusting people like Abbott kill people. Basically, is what they're doing. And I think I've ranted for the video. Hopefully I didn't swear too much. I wasn't paying that much attention. I was trying not to swear, trying to be PG as much as possible. But it's hard to do. It's hard to do. I mean, I do this channel as a sort of therapy for myself to deal with this stuff that frustrates me so much, socially, politically. And anyway, thanks for those of you who are going to join me on this video. I appreciate your views, honestly. I appreciate the likes. And leave messages, leave comments. You like the video, you don't like the video. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me. And hit the subscribe button. And thanks for watching. Have a good day.